you will hear, and you've seen the title. Let me just stop that before it goes into the end of the world. Right, so, yes, you'll be wondering, you'll think, but there's a flipping 90-minute movie. Yes, look, we needed to watch Doctor Who tonight. We haven't got time for a 90-minute movie. We did. We needed it tonight. And also, I owe Stuart a bonus episode. I'm going to do that, Stuart. I'm going to get the kids involved. But anyway. So, yes, we've skipped ahead to Rose because how could you not? And I'm going to fill in, because we watched the movie not long ago. So I'm going to fill that in over the weekend when Lib's away doing something. Right, okay. Survival was 1989. And obviously we've had another Doctor in between, who we'll get around to discussing. And then this happened. So just to set it in context before we forget all of this completely, I first saw this episode with the leak, the Canadian leak. Was it Canadian? And I went round to my friend Ed's house and we watched it, and Libby was cross because I shouldn't have watched the leak. And then for the actual... me and Ed watched it on his computer.
Oh, the leak. Sorry,
And then to watch the actual episode, myself and Elizabeth travelled down to Tamworth. I went round to, I think it was Paul's house, and watched it with Paul and John and Nat and everybody. And that's how we experienced Rose for the first time. But let's forget about all that. No, there's one more thing. There's one more thing I want to say, and I was thinking about this the other day. I, at the time, was working in a place called Worksop, in a library. Worksop, I love Worksop. And I drove from where I live now, in Sheffield, to Worksop every day. And I remember driving down, I was listening to Radio 4, the Today programme, because I am pretentious. And they interviewed, it may have been Clayton Hickman, actually, of Doctor Who magazine, of this parish, formerly of this parish. And I knew nothing about RTD. Did you know anything about RTD before this? Did you watch Queer as Folk? Were you aware of Queer as... I was aware of Queer as Folk, but because I was a very sheltered Tamworthian lad, like, I think the concept of Queer as Folk prior to 2000 or whatever would have scared me somewhat, and I'd make no bones about it. You know, Tamworth is not the most cosmopolitan of place, and I was an exceptionally naive and ignorant young man. I wasn't in any way homophobic or whatever, but I think I wasn't ready in my progression as a human being to deal with a program called Queer as Folk at that point in my life. At least before 2004 we're talking, but before that point, I seem to remember it was on once, and it's not as if it's like, oh no, I'm not watching that. It was like, that's not for me, I'll move away. And to be fair, a lot of RTD stuff to this day that's not Doctor Who, I feel the same way about. Not obviously because of the homosexuality, for goodness sake, but because of the fact that this man writes stuff that flipping cuts me to the quick. We watched the first episode of It's a Sin during lockdown, I think. And I think we both tacitly agreed that we could not deal with the heartbreak of watching more. Because it's phenomenal, the first episode. And I know full well that if I watched it, my heart would be broken into a billion pieces. So there we go. And yes, I know I'm supposed to watch years and years. Everybody keeps telling me, but there we go. Right, moving on. So here we are with this new programme. And honestly, I could talk now for as long as the programme was just on that we watched. How can I start this? RTD in this does the most phenomenal job of introducing Doctor Who to people who've never seen it, while at the same time reassuring everybody who has already seen it that this is the same programme. It is a masterclass of being an open door for everybody. For everybody. Come in. You're going to enjoy this. It's going to be awesome. So you know everything about it. Fair play to you. So you know nothing about it. You are more than welcome. There are that many things dropped in for the fan. So let's talk about us, because we have seen every single episode of Doctor Who thus far. So let's just accept that fact. In this Doctor Who story, we have got autons for a start. We have got your archetypal first time the companion comes into the TARDIS, done better in this story than any time ever in its past. We have got so many doctory tropes dropped in that you just know you're dealing with the same character, even though admittedly we did not know we were dealing with the same character. We don't know we're dealing with the same character, really, truly, up until flipping... well into Tennant's run. It took that long for us to know, and yet we are safe in the hands. The Doctor's first line is run. I mean, what more do you need? And then, of course, we get the TARDIS, and oh my goodness, my favourite bit, there's two favourite bits of the TARDIS is when she goes in, obviously, you're not sticking around for this?
I'm listening.
Okay. When she goes in and comes out again, and then she goes in again, and my gosh, now the TARDIS looks tiny inside. Where at the time it was massive. But the other bit is, and this, I don't think anybody talks about this, is when he says, she goes, what's a police box? And he goes, it's a disguise. It's just absolutely amazing. Because Eccleston, from the off, from the flipping outset, just hits this like nothing else. And I don't know how much of it, let's say 50-50, let's just blow it, is the script and how much of it is the performance. But Christ on a bike, I just cannot get over the fact that he hits this so hard and so perfectly. And that mix, and I describe this, and long story, in a podcast, a resting podcast, I describe it as significant, like manic energy and working class energy. So not a single Doctor up until this point has been this just, for want of a better word, normal. And I don't mean normal. That's actually quite insulting, so I'm going to take that back. What this is just so different. Relatable, actually. And I said in relation to survival that we were in places that, you know, I was wandering around as a kid. And that is totally what we get here. We get London, and you know, London has a certain exotic quality to it, unless you live in London, of course, in which case it's just London. But anybody living outside of London, whether we're cynical about it or not, is still presented as this like, oh, it's London, is it fancy? But then you get flipping blocks of flats. And survival nudged towards that, but we get it full force here. And we get this sense that this Doctor is just not one of us. And admittedly, I live in the north now. Not, you know, some would debate whether Sheffield's the north. But we get a Doctor here that just seems so different and yet is so doctory. So doctory. And only with hindsight do I really appreciate that. But he's so doctory. That speech about being on the skin of the planet and then if I let go, then whoomph. That stuff where he's sort of, for want of a better word, feeling out Rose as a possible companion, and she impresses him. And let's talk about that. Christ on a bike. You will not know, if you are younger, much younger than me anyway, what a little bit of controversy it caused when Billy Piper got cast as a new companion. To us, the Libs and Peters of the world, to us, Billy Piper was this fairly naff pop star. And she'd had one single, and at one point she was touted as a sort of the British equivalent of Britney Spears. I mean, it was that sort of thing. And then it was Billy Piper as the companion. And I just, you know, Eccleston got announced to, we were like, cool, new author. And back to this thing about me, you know, being this wet behind the ears kid. We watched, when RTD got announced, Second Coming with Christopher Eccleston. And again, so naive, so stupid back in the day. And this is, I think, the first time I saw Christopher. He was in a film. What was the film in? Shallow Grave. And this was a, you know, an up and coming ish established actor. And, you know, I'm not a big television buff, but, you know, he'd made waves. Our Friends in the North, that's it, Friends in the North. But Billy Piper was just this pop star. Oh, my God. The episode's called Rose. Never forget that. The first episode of Doctor Who is called An Unearthly Child, and that's Susan. So our first moment is being told the nature of the companion, Rose. I mean, that's different. That's different in a way that suggests that Russell T Davies has spotted something about Doctor Who that I had never spotted. And he just nails it from the outset. He spots things about Doctor Who that I didn't even recognise were there. And it's a fine author that does that. A brief aside, I've been reading this book called The Giver by Lois Lowry to my Year 8 students. You may have read The Giver. If you haven't, you should. It's an amazing book. And I realised only after finishing it and listening to a brief interview with Lois Lowry why it was that halfway through last half term I've been banging on about our kids at school being safe. And you know, this idea, are our kids over safe? Are we over protecting them? That's all the way through The Giver. Never even realised it. And that's the mark of a fine book or a fine work of art, that it gets inside and you don't recognise sometimes the things that it's doing to you. Well, RTD does that. RTD does that because what he's doing is he's spotted the gaps in Doctor Who that we thought it was all about flipping outlandish costumes of the Doctor and eccentric behaviours and all these things with the trappings. But what RTD spots is it's about the adventure and the excitement and the mix of the mundane and the outlandish, but not, and I know the Doctor overtly says that the mundane is to be dismissed, but it's not, because of course we're going on a journey with this Doctor and we're going to see him grow and change. And he disses chips and food and stuff. But that's part of the fabric of life, part of the glory of life. RTD has got the fact that it's that mix of the two, the mundanity and the extraordinary, that makes Doctor Who such a fascinating and brilliant thing. We also get the meta level of this. Clive is clearly a Doctor Who fan. Clive is clearly a Doctor Who fan, even to the extent of his wife coming down the stairs and finding it laughable that there are female fans. RTD knows there's female fans, but he also knows the public perception of Doctor Who is that there aren't, so he plays with that idea. Clive's a wonderful character, and he's the first beloved character. I mean, Clive appears in, 10 minutes this? I still miss Clive, the fact that he's the one that gets killed. That look on his face when he gets killed by the Whoathon, using the same sound effect as was used in Spearhead from Space. Actually giving us the thing that was missed in Spearhead from Space, of them absolutely finally shattering the glass. My God. This is a flipping masterclass of how to do Doctor Who coming back. And listen, I know I've been naughty. I've skipped the movie, and we will talk about the movie. But already in my head, I was starting to pick out what I was going to say about the movie, having seen it so recently. And one thing the movie didn't do was just accept the fact that if you try and hang on to too much of the lore too early, you are going to lose people straight off the bat. RTD just disses it, just gets rid of it. What's the essence of Doctor Who? Slaps it on a screen. It's a blue box with a dude inside it who is, I was going to say better, not better, the best of what we can be. There we go. That's what it is. And then revealing in the ordinary people around him the best that they can be as well. And just, you can see where this is going. He's gay and she's an alien. Oh, man. Again, I keep going on about this. I feel embarrassed even saying it out loud. I feel embarrassed saying it out loud. But Doctor Who at this point was being one of the most, we will see, it's becoming one of the most progressive television programmes. You know, I'm so proud, that my show at the helm of Russell T Davies was doing stuff and forwarding I hate saying agenda because it sounds negative, and it's not an agenda, it's just saying, this is the world that we live in. This is the glory and the mess of it and the beauty of it. And these are the people that we're representing here. Just already it starts here. Working class people on the television. You know, Doctor Who had shied from that and it was getting towards it. But it's just, Jackie, got to talk about Jackie. At this point, wasn't down with her. Mickey, now I know Noel Clarke, this is going to crop up a couple of times, isn't it? But God, I thought he was rubbish in this. Mickey, crikey, the places he goes. Maybe not. Anyway, we'll talk about that when we get there. But for bringing this programme back, for putting this programme on the television, for beginning the process of the third golden age of Doctor Who, where it would wear its progressive nature on its sleeve, where it would become a loud and proud, I use that word advisedly, force for good in the world. This was just phenomenal. Say good things about this programme.
I have no increasingly excellent things that I can say because you've said them all, but I'm going to bed and you have to go to bed also.
I'm tired. Because tomorrow night, I'm up till flipping nearly 2 o'clock in the morning watching Doctor Who, my God. Anyway, what a bright new dawn. What a beautiful thing. What can I say?